I'm calling the meeting to order. Please make sure your little green lights are on if you want to say anything. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll?
Kathy Cavallari.
It was that once.
Frank Falcone,
Here.
Stephanie DeMayo, I'm here. Chris Wilson,
Present.
Connie Stuckert,
Here,
Melissa Cuniff.
absent.
Not here, and Rosario Scalia.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we stand for a moment of silence in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I assume everybody has looked at the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve it, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agendas.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. We have no public, so there will be no public comment. I assume everyone has memorized the minutes from the last meeting. So can I have a motion to approve them?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Okay, the next item on the agenda is related to the historic resources inventory. As you know, at the last meeting, we put in a recommendation for a class 2 historic resource application for the Horace Lewis house. And Nicole de Botton, representing the owners, has asked for a 1-month delay for, I think, reasons of health, perhaps.
Yeah, but both she and her brother are having medical procedures tomorrow. And so they're unable to be here tonight because of that. And so the two that would have come in and represented them, or one of the two of them, like they couldn't send the other one. And so I told them that was a reasonable reason to postpone.
I agree, it certainly is. We don't want people trundling in their hospital beds. I do have one or two questions around it. One is, I do think that come hell or high water, they should be prepared to present next month. I don't think that we should delay it any further than that. Would the other commissioners agree with me on that?
I would, yes. I think that they have a fairly large cadre of lawyers and probably people that could represent.
Yeah, and
For this kind of,
and
especially
let me
this
just say this,
meeting.
that when she met with me, she said, do I need to send my lawyer? And at this level, she does not. This is really just so that you present your basics of your information, they present their basics of their information. The real, as I had a misunderstanding, and I want to make it clear to this group, the real hearing is before the Board of Supervisors. This is not really a hearing. You are really just getting enough information to present it on to the board.
Right.
And so, you know, she has some information that she wants to present to you on her side. And because she did, and it wasn't just like, yeah, we're just, you know, she thinks she has some information that may impact your decision.
Mhm.
And so I said, yes, we'll do that. And she said, we can be here on the 28th in March, and that's not an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they get a copy of what I sent over yet?
I do believe they've gotten a copy of that. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then we need to get them together. I know she's seen it because she's made a comment about it, but we'll make sure she has it.
Okay. And when she gets something, will you send it through like email or something to,
If she submits something prior to the meeting, then we would share that with you.
okay,
It would be on the agenda, just like your information's on. the
yeah,
agenda.
that would be perfect.
It would be wise though to have something. If she has information to submit, we should have it beforehand, not at the last moment.
I'm sorry, say that again?
If she has information that she wants us to review, we should have it with some time before.
But so one of the things that, I think we have to be careful of is that you're asking somebody to put something together that potentially is going to be a hearing before the board. And we don't have you can't require somebody who's doing a hearing on the defense side to put up information ahead of time. And so you just can't. And so you have to have a balance. It's more our side if you're putting out something then so that they know what they're doing. But if they have a defense, my guess is they're going to share it because they want us to know what it is. But it may, when that gets shared, I can't make them share it ahead of time.
Perfect.
Just like when we go into a zoning hearing case and somebody's putting on a zoning hearing case, I can't make them give us the information up front. We request it because that way we can put it up on the screen and everybody gets to see it and it's easy. But invariably they come in with pieces that they hand into the zoning hearing board at the moment.
The other issue I have is, and maybe I'm out of line with this, and if I am, just say so. But it seems to me that if someone wants to request a delay of a hearing in front of this group, there should be some way that this group can register an opinion as to whether they're in favor of that delay or not. I realize there are issues of timing around this, which is one reason I'm raising it, because we only meet once a month.
Yeah.
But it does seem to me that it would be reasonable that the group that is holding the hearing has some reason to have some input into whether the hearing is going to be delayed or not.
I mean, I think that's reasonable in your assumption. I'm just not sure how it works practically this.
Is it possible, for example, for you to send around an email to the members of the commission saying, I've had a request for a delay of a hearing? Is that okay with everybody, or?
I guess my question here, like this was an example though, in that, theoretically you could go tonight and you could put on your side of the case and you could make your recommendation to the
Well,
board.
sure, but we wouldn't want to do that.
I don't think that's wise.
No.
And so, it's hard to do that because you have to do your actions under the Sunshine Act publicly. And so to do it,
Well, we do, but you don't. I mean, you can.
well, I
contact all
can,
of us.
I can, like, that's why I made the decision to say it was postponed. Like I can do that on that level, but if I sent an email around and asked you, I'm basically asking you to make a decision together. And that now becomes a committee decision. And so that's the problem with the Sunshine Act, in that even a straw poll kind of thing, like, would you guys be interested? Would you guys be willing? If you did it all and responded to an email, there's some concerns that I have with that. So
Well, I think there needs to be, we need to find a way for some input. I mean, I'm not concerned about this situation because medical excuses are perfectly legitimate. What I am concerned about going down the pike is people using it as a delaying tactic.
Sure, and we're going to have to kind of, I might just, if I think somebody's using a delaying tactic, and that's what I really think is happening, I can tell you right now, I'm just going to say, they're going to present their side of it, and that'll probably be going on to the board as their recommendation. If you don't want to weigh in, that's your choice. You know, I mean, I can do that. The challenge is what becomes something that's a legitimate delay and what's not. I mean, I felt like this was. But let me talk with our solicitors a way we can maybe work around that. I'm just not sure what that is.
Yeah,
There's still a 30-day everything rebuttal back anyway. Right?
Correct.
You know, so we just started the process and
Yeah,
time marches on from when we
Yeah.
start the clock.
yeah,
And as you said, you can make a decision that should be in our favor or whatever the best thing is. It's
Right.
not like if they're sick, it was a great delay,
yeah.
you know,
But I also,
just
wanna-
trusting what we have.
I also want to know if they have still to present the case by the board of supervisor. So any information which doesn't come to this table, it will be still presented. Right? Am I-
Correct.
So I think that as a rule, a general rule, one can say that if they ask for a delay, depends, it's based on this board if we want to accept it or not at the moment we convene here.
Yeah,
The risk is that they will not have a delay and we will proceed anyhow. And then they have to present whatever arguments they want to make at the board of supervisors.
yeah. I mean, that is,
do that.
I mean, that is a way to work through it, you know. I mean, obviously, I felt like when I told you that there was a medical issue that you guys would understand that, and that was, and that's, you know, what they reached out with us early on, so.
I think we did understand that. I think we know that they're a large group. And for this type of hearing to present, you're pretty much, it's not the first, what they need them for is that next one. But for this one, they could have sent someone, brief them. That's the way, I mean, I first thought of it.
Well,
Because
but
I know
you're-
he has quite a few people that work under him, and in there for their development.
Right, but you got to remember that, you know, this is kind of a family-run business and you know, when I was talking to Nicole, which is the daughter of Claude, you know, she's like, the three people that really know this is our attorney, and we don't really want to have to pay our attorney to come here, and her brother and herself. And she said, we're the ones that have done the research on it and are prepared to come in. And so, and I, you know, I think that was fair in what they were doing. So,
Well, why don't we leave it that you will talk with the township attorney and
Right.
see if a way around this can be found. So that it's possible moving forward for this commission in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just me as the chairman or whether it's everybody on the commission or what have you, can have some kind of input into these decisions. Among other things, if we can, I think to a certain extent, it gets you off the hook.
yeah,
So we'll leave it at that, and you'll get back to us with a report on that at
Yes.
our next meeting, I guess.
hopefully I'll have an answer from our solicitor by then, and yes.
Yes, I do know about lawyers. Okay. The next item on the agenda, future land development review. Discussion and possible recommendation regarding the Liseter Farmhouse change of use application will be presented at the March 28th meeting. I guess, Steve, you want to tell us? what's
Yeah,
going on
so
with this?
I don't know how many of you familiar with the Liseter Farmhouse. It's up on the, what I would consider the northern part of the property. If you went in their northern entrance and you came in and it would be off to the left, it's in the building that the developer Toll Brothers has used, or the contractor Toll Brothers has used as their office. It was meant to be a historic building maintained on the property. It did not have a specific use in the developer plans. The HOA, Homeowners Association, has come back and said, we have a use for that building. The use would be to put their post office in there. They were supposed to have they have a post office inside down at the, down at the main entrance that kind of does post office for probably about 2/3 of the property. The other 2/3, the boxes were to be outside and people were to walk up to them or go up to them. They said they thought it would be nice to have it inside, just like the other, to be kind of consistent. And they had a need for some office space for the management company, but it's not their primary office space. It's kind of like overflow office space for a couple of the management company employees that will be helping them. So my understanding is the upstairs is supposed to be kind of office space. The downstairs is supposed to be the mailboxes and a small meeting room if somebody were to need to meet in that location for them. It's a change of use than what's on the plan. They're coming in, they're asking for a waiver of a full land development. But it's because it's listed as one of the historic properties on, or historic buildings on that property, it would go before you as well. I think it's probably a good adaptive. It is a good adaptive reuse of that particular building. And it's more, the one conversation that we've had is they have to make the post office section ADA compatible. And so the biggest piece that will probably be coming before you is how they do the ramp to get into the building. Because right now the door, I think, is probably like I don't know if it's a half story, but it's up, I think, 4 steps or 5 steps, something like that, to get in. And so
And there's a specific grade that they have, gradient that they have to use.
they have to
I
achieve
think it's
that.
like 1 inch to a foot. I
Yeah.
think.
Yes. So they're working on a design that would stay with the kind of what the building is and still be able to accomplish that.
Now, what specifically does this committee need to do?
I don't think you need to do anything today.
Well, no, but I mean, when they come before us.
I think really, I would assume that this committee wants to support this only in that it keeps I'm always concerned when a historic building sits empty, or any building sits empty, because it usually means that the building itself deteriorates faster than if it's being maintained and used and somebody's having some type of living and or activity in the building on a regular basis. Because if you don't, that's what's going to happen at this location. That's what originally was set. This building would just sit vacant, and my fear is that it would basically just go into disrepair. This is a way to keep it. I don't think they're making any changes to the outside, minimal changes to the inside. And so that's what that is. So you
So
review-
basically, this commission should be prepared to say blessings upon you.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, be careful of the ramp.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really, I think it's a pretty straightforward. I think that the piece that you may want to weigh in on is the ramp and make sure that it doesn't take away from the way that, if you wanted to make sure that it kind of stays in context of the historic nature of the building.
Unobtrusive.
Yes.
What
So-
is the
so
building
of the-
that they're moving from? What is happening?
They're
to
not
that?
moving from any building.
They're not,
This-
the
so
post office, but
The
that's the
post
farmhouse
office is
too.
still staying
Okay.
there. The farmhouse is just taking on on the land development plans, the northern portion of the properties, the northern homes on the property were to have a post office box outside. They were going to build like a kind of cover over it so that people could go pick up their mail and be undercover. The more they talked about it, they said, well, we have the rest of the property goes into a post office. We have this building. We think this makes a good use of this. People could walk inside, get their mail, and it gives an overflow for their office people who need some additional space. It's being used as an office today, not today, but it had been being used
Yeah,
by an office for Toll Brothers, but that was kind of under the agreement of the land development. It's just continuing. I think it's a better use ultimately, because I think they'll take better care of it because
It's there.
it's theirs and they want to have that.
So of the 2 or 3 buildings that are sort of original on that end of the property, this is the one that's up closer to the road, not the 2 that are down by the wetlands.
Yes, the one down by the wetlands was removed,
Yeah,
one
it's
of the
gone.
two.
Okay.
And then there's actually, I think, 11 buildings that were on the property. I think 6 of them remain that were historic, defined as historic in nature. I have one that I questioned whether it had any historical value.
The one they rebuilt,
Huh?
the one they rebuilt.
Not the barn, the barn.
No, up above the barn, the one they had wrapped and then they tore it down and built a facsimile of it. Replica.
No, there was a shed that I would have argued was nothing more than
Oh, it was like a hay shed,
maybe something like that.
down almost like. Not quite as far down as the wetlands were, but.
Yeah,
over that
let me
area.
just say, it looked a whole lot newer than the one that was on my grandmother's farm, so.
Yes, but it's the one that's up closer to the road. Okay.
Yeah.
In case we want to. See what it looks like currently.
Yeah, if you drive in at the north entrance, it's the first really, well, you'll know which one it is. It's the only historic house in that area.
Okay, anything further on this topic?
Just so you know, what I'm going to be doing, what I've asked Steve to do is if there are projects like this one that are coming that we know about, even though they may not be before you tonight in this way, if we can get them on your agenda, we don't even have to spend time on them, but it's more of just to make sure you're aware that they're coming before you kind of thing. If you want to do some research between the 2 meetings so that you're prepared.
Are any of these properties that we should flag as being considered for class 2?
I'm not, I wouldn't know that answer on this one for sure. It may qualify for that. I don't know. But what I would say is if it's coming before you, most likely we've decided somewhere in our ordinances, it's been defined as a historic building. It may not meet class 1 or class 2, but it's at least been defined, kind of like we brought before you the Ellis School building. It was not defined as one of those 2, but in our ordinance, it was defined as a historic building. And so not the historic ordinance, it was defined in the PRD as a historic ordinance or a historic building. And so it came before you. And I think that's the case in both of these situations. In both of these are PRDs. And so that was the, planned residential developments. And so they were both, they both triggered for it to come before you.
I should think at some point we might want to keep our eye on them.
Yep.
Not necessarily right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving right along. We're now down to new business, and this one I'll take the blame for. In reviewing the ordinance, when Kathy and I were going over class 1 and class 2 properties with regard to the Horace Lewis house, if you read the ordinance carefully, in the section on historic resources inventory, criteria for designation as a class 1 historic resource, one of the things that you will find if you read it closely is that there is no mechanism in the ordinance for either this commission or a property owner to apply for class 1 status. Right now, class 1 status can only be granted if PHMC has acted or one of the agencies of the Department of the Interior has acted, we have no ability to act. And whereas, of course, with class 2, we do have the ability to act, as does a property owner. Applications for class 2 can be made either through this commission or by the property owner. And it seemed to me anyway, that a similar mechanism ought to exist for class 1. So I drafted a little language, ran it by Kathy. And Tiffany, I believe I sent it to you as well. Thereby not violating the sunshine laws. And it struck me that the solution was fairly simple. We just need to add a clause 7, which would be that the criteria is deemed by majority vote of the Historic Preservation Commission to meet eligibility standards of either the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission or the Department of the Interior, even if the property in question has not formally applied to PHMC or the Department of the Interior. And I don't have any pride of authorship around this language. I'm quite willing to modify it, change it or drop it completely, depending on what this commission thinks. But this is why I asked you to bring your copies of the ordinance with you, so that you could see how it fit in. And this actually would be on page 7 of the ordinance. I do know that when I drafted this, I neglected to include the word application, which maybe ought to be in there. As Stephen, you talked with the township attorney about this, you ran it by him or not?
I just let him know that you were looking at something on this level. And he and I have not had an official conversation about it. Like, I forwarded it to him, but he and I have not had an official conversation regarding this specifically. I do know that my question, I just want to make sure that we're clear that in this, it may be a criteria that you all are coming back with, but your understanding is it would still go before the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, yeah.
For the official hearing. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we, that it doesn't,
No, we're not the final actor on any of this.
yeah, that I think that I just want to make sure that we make sure. Say that again. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear for those who were in it, who were looking at it, that the actual action would go back before the board.
Well, why don't I add a sentence that says, final approval is subject to the Board of Supervisors.
Well, they all are.
I think they all are, and that's
Yeah,
what
they
I
all
just
are.
wanted to make sure, Alex,
It's
is,
just an add.
I think it's okay, but I just wanted the solicitor to make sure that he agreed with me that it was okay in that light.
Well, if he's actually, I mean, he may not have looked at it yet, but if he did look at it, I would have thought you would have heard about it if it ran up any red flags.
Well, I ended up sending it to late last week. He and I have talked about 10 different other things that are going on, but not this.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Actually, as I was thinking about it, go ahead.
Can I ask a clarification? I'm new, so I read the ordinance for the first time. And I realized one thing, that what you have listed as class 2, the criteria for being class 2, are the same criteria for which the Pennsylvania Museum Commission will give a status to National Register of Historic Places. So to me was kind of puzzling. I said, well, these are the same criteria that will be used to present the property to the Pennsylvania Museum Commission. If 2 of these 3 criteria are met, for them it will be National Register eligible. So I'm not sure how class 1 and class 2 is being defined by this ordinance.
Yes, the class 1 has a stronger protection in it.
I
So it
understand.
typically, you should have had one, it should have been one class. Because, yes, and typically, they would have all the inventory that was already documented would have been placed into the,
That's
Ordinance.
what wasn't clear to me.
And
I
then
thought that
if they want to go further for the National Register, that would have all happened, yes. But they would have all been put into the initial protections. And then you'd have a smaller pool of properties that you had to go
I
forward.
think it really relates to, if you go further into the ordinance onto page 12. It really goes to what happens with these properties. If they want building permits or they want demolition permits or what have you. The class 1 makes it almost impossible for them to tear something down. Whereas in class 2, gee, it's nice, but if you want to get rid of the building, you can. So it's that, I think the difference is not so much in what the application criteria are as they are in what happens after the designation has been given. With the class 1, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the class 2 criteria are exactly the same as the National Register.
you can go online on the Pennsylvania Museum Commission.
I have.
Yeah.
Reports. There is a huge overlap,
Yeah,
huge overlap of criteria.
yeah,
So if you're listed as class 2.
yeah.
I have what qualifies a property for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, and it's actually it's not real specific. It is somewhat vague, like our class 2, in
Yeah.
terms of it gives you a lot of options.
Yeah,
So technically, what the point of doing this is to say, hey, class 2, they made class 1 all these obstacles of having to get the higher authority to say this, because it has a lot more protection in it.
yeah,
So what we're trying to do is say, wait a minute, we have so many properties that should get the higher protection. Shouldn't be that daunting a task to get that. So when you do try to present this amendment, if there's a stumbling block, or somehow they don't want to, you will find out what that is, because that's what's gonna dictate the problem that they'll see in getting it passed, because there shouldn't really be one.
mhm,
So unless there's some block somewhere about not wanting properties to get on a stronger, easily onto a stronger protection.
mm,
And that's, because you could have easily said class 2 classified would have all those same protections. You could have made that easily the same as the protection for class 1 and made that whole process go through.
but in fact, the protections for class 1 and class 2 are different.
Yes. And then that is
I understand that, but my
problem.
question was the criteria for bringing them in are largely overlapping. So if a property in class 2 fulfill those criteria, is basically National Register eligible according to the Pennsylvania Museum Commission.
Correct. And then we would be, if we amended it, we would be able to say that, because that's the criteria we would be using. Because it has it all listed here, the same.
Okay.
Yes, it has that same criteria here. You just don't have to go through this whole process and get a letter and wait till they meet 3 times a year. And then they hear it.
Yeah, but I felt
So-
like the criteria for class 2 are so highly elevated that leave some potential class 2 not really able to be protected at the township level, because the criteria are very high at the same criteria for class 1. So I feel like class 2 should be almost, I don't know what criteria should be followed for class 2, because some structure might not fulfill this criteria, such high level of criteria, but still by the water protection to a certain level for class 2.
Well, in the class 2, there's, yeah, I mean, the differences, yeah, are
It's nominal. The difference
Yes.
is very nominal.
But there are many that you only need one or two. You only need one.
Okay.
And that's pretty open. And the age of the building is, I mean, our buildings are getting up there in the 75 now from almost 1950, you're going to late 1940s. So, and so they have a lot more.
I want to be clear, this is not a criticism of the ordinance. I just want to understand what I'm reading when I have to make a judgment or something. I want to be in tune to what.
Biggest problem that came up in doing the ordinance, or the question that would come up from certain, and it was mostly the planning commission, and it was ours, not the county, was who determined the list? Who made the inventory list? Who's determining what these buildings are? Unfortunately, I did not have the Delaware County Planning Department's list, which I now have, which would have directly said, well, they made the list along with the state.
But the list that we have in township, which was made in the 80s, is Delaware County, is also at the state level, right?
Yes, they
I showed you
assisted
the link. I
them.
sent you the
Yes,
link.
it's,
They show
Yes.
that it's not been applied for eligibility, but they have a record of the structures we have, which
At the
is the
state
state
level.
level, at the state level. And also the Philadelphia Architects database, which basically holds up most of the state and national historical structures. It's there too. I mean, that document with all the listing of the homes, which were back there in the 80s, it's there. They don't have a record of which one has been demolished because no one has been informed them
right.
or updated the listing. So, but they are already
Well,
there.
that's because the state assisted in developing it. That's who worked with them and gave them grants.
That was a little bit, I mean, I asked this as a new person, it was puzzling to me that this structure were not already in once the ordinance was passed, since they're already at the state level. And now
Yeah.
there's to be a process for applying for them and all the other things. I felt like at least the historical class 2 should have brought everything should be brought in. And then you could have sorted out which one was more dignified or eligible for class 1. But
Well, I think the decision was made not to include this inventory in the ordinance. Some other townships have done that, but the decision was made in this township not to do that. So we're having to sort of retroactively go back and pick these houses, these buildings, and
Or amend. And that,
Oh,
and
no, I
originally that's what
understand. I
we,
understand.
yeah.
I was just, I mean, this is just a question. Again, I'm not an expert on this. It is okay not to have those resources included when they're already listed at the county state level. Can the township avoid to do that the moment it passes a preservation ordinance?
So
It's a
I-
legal
That's a good
question.
point that we never really followed up on, and I.
I
I
know.
think the issue was the township wasn't questioning whether it was on the state or county level. The township said that in order for us to put the historic preservation ordinance together, and the way we did it, there actually, I mean, it was clear that class 1s could be added, and they were already designated as a historical resource that there was no question about. And the way the state law allowed for the township to do the historic resource or historic preservation resource, it was clear that they could do that without going through specific zoning for each one of those 5 locations. The issue that came back when we went to put the ordinance together was that every house that is added in, whether class 2 or class 1, going forward would require basically a zoning map change. And because it requires a zoning map change, there's a hearing required. And so if the township would have passed the ordinance with all, whatever it is, 70 to 100 homes or buildings on it, it would have required, and because they weren't together, like if they were all in a section of the town, it would have been easy to say, this is going to be a historic section, and we could have defined the map and said,
But that's an
This is-
historic district, I know.
this is our historic district. For us, the historic district is almost like spot zoning in that it is, this is a historic house here, this is a historic house over
But
here,
you
this
don't
is a
need, you don't
historic.
need the historic district to bring in the historic structure existent. But let me ask you the question in a different way. Now that you have a preservation ordinance, and this structure are listed to the state and the county, if one of the structure gets demolished because it's not in the ordinance, who is legally responsible for that? Because they are listed. And now there is a preservation.
But they're not in the historic district out of that's defined by the township.
But you don't need an historic district to protect the structure. The historic district, I lived in a historic district, Lower Merion, and I was part of putting it together. I know what it is. The historic district.
Well, look, I don't want to, I mean, we go over this every meeting almost, and I can take the time. I think the question, I think the question really that you're having probably needs to go back to the solicitor. I'm not the solicitor.
Maybe you should.
I have proposed it to the solicitor. It's been proposed to him on multiple occasions. And the solicitor has said that in order for properties to be added, it has to go through a hearing process. And his comment, the reason why it wasn't done, and my understanding is the reason why this ordinance has taken forever to get to where it is even today, is because it was going to require a hearing for each property, and the properties around them all had to be notified as well. We have a 200-foot requirement to notify. We basically would have been notifying the entire town to do this based on the number of historic properties in town. There would have been sections that weren't, it was decided that the way to do this, to build this, the way the board wanted to do it at the time, and it was the board's decision, was to not go through all of those hearings at one time, but to go through and as this commission presented them to them, they would take certain number and process so many a year and move forward in that way. That was the decision that was made by the board. That's why we're here where we are today. Whether it could have been done differently or not, I don't know, but that was the decision that was made. And my understanding was made because each one required a hearing. And to do that, it would have to have been individual hearings for each one. We would have been, I mean, we may never have gotten through the process. This at least gave us a place to start, and now we can add as we go along.
Okay, this is getting a little far away from what we need to do here. So let's get back to the wording of this. Comments?
So does the process remain the same regardless of class 1 and class 2 application? So if we're approving a class 1 application, does it still go to the Board of Supervisors and still follows along
Yeah.
the same path?
Yeah.
We can
Which-
apply.
Okay,
So we could apply for class 1. There's quite a few properties that qualify.
and that
class
may
1.
be up to the homeowner or the property owner.
It
Since-
can be,
since
yeah.
A lot of, we expect the property owners to come forth and apply.
Yes, I've been
So it would-
contacting them, those that I know, that have homes that qualify. And they're either willing to fill them out or they don't care if we fill them out. As I said, I did contact every one of the.
No, I'm
homeowners
just
prior-
wondering,
no,
like,
no,
what-
no, I meant prior to the
Yeah.
ordinance. So we know that they want, most of them want to be on it.
Mhm.
They
So-
just,
Well, no, I mean, they want to be on it. I'm just wondering, when.
So
If
So
we,
is the question at hand for today's business?
this.
Do we want to approve putting this additional language forward if approved by the township solicitor?
Yeah, that's the issue.
I'm fine with it. I just wanted to know what happened since it was. a
No,
different
I
class.
think the procedures would be the same.
This just gives us the ability to deal with class 1, which we don't have currently.
Exactly.
I'm in favor too. I mean.
Yes,
Somebody had to make a motion. I make a motion, we approve it.
I second.
and, can we add into that motion something?
What do you,
Just if, If there's a stumbling block, we need to have it presented. Why?
I'm
Why
sorry,
there would be a
Kathy, can you,
stumbling block to this? If it says, no, you can't do it. I would like to,
What do you,
if, is there a stumbling block to putting this amendment in? If he says, well, I'd like more clarification on what what the problem would
A
be.
further discussion, not
Yes.
no.
Not
end of
now, and then
story.
we move on. We need to like further discuss,
well, I think that,
because legally I don't see any. I
well, if
mean,
we
I'm
have
trying
a
to figure
motion,
out-
I have a motion on the floor. And
Yes.
it's been seconded. So, we can discuss that motion. As it applies. If you want to make an amendment to the motion, you can propose an amendment. But I want to keep this moving. So do you have an amendment you want to propose? To the motion?
I guess if the motion is, or the amendment is.
The motion is,
The solicitor, wait, if the solicitor, I just want, if he says that it's not workable, we need to have a discussion on that. That's what I wanted. I just don't want it, okay, it didn't go.
well, the
He says
thing
no.
is, if we approve this,
We'll get that anyway. If they throw it back at us, we can.
Yeah.
go back to them.
Okay,
It's-
Right.
It's the normal way. You
Wait
always
to
have
see what
appeal.
they say, and then we.
Yeah.
okay,
You always have appeal.
right?
okay, that's good.
Okay, well then I'm gonna call the question, we'll vote on this, vote to approve this language, Frank's motion. So all in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? Okay. And we will hope for a happy solicitor.
well, the way I'm taking it is you're presenting this. I will present it to the solicitor, but it will also.
It has to go to the supervisors. I mean, it's an amendment to the ordinance, so they're gonna have to approve it.
Right, we're just approving to send it to them.
Yes, exactly.
And I guess you have to go through him first to even get it to the point where it goes to them. Correct? Was that the
Yeah.
point?
Well,
Or not
hopefully,
necessarily?
The process started when we did it.
Yeah, I will take it back and we'll talk about the direction that it's gonna go. I'll talk to Linda, how he wants to handle it.
okay, the final item on the agenda is one that we deferred from last month, which is to discuss and possibly approve the SMART goals for 2023. And Steve Bradley has printed these out, and you should have a copy in front of them. And Tiffany, since you pulled these together, do you want to present this?
Sure.
So the SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. The goal itself in bold would be the goal of the Historic Preservation Commission is to recommend 8 properties to the Board of Supervisors to be designated as class 2, but I would amend that to class 2/1 as historical resources. So to make sure that it is a SMART goal, we have to look at it specifically. We will commit to reviewing 1 application during each meeting, assuming that there is at least 8 meetings, because we did discuss potentially not meeting over the summer as schedules may be in conflict. Measurable, we will begin to review in February with 11 months left in 2023. And there's a possibility of 2 summer months without a meeting due to commission member schedules. Attainable, with the uncertainty of the summer meetings, 8 is attainable number of applications to be reviewed. And the relevancy is the first directive of the commission is to review and approve applications for class 2/1 historical resources. And the time bound nature of it is the applications would be reviewed. To be reviewed as bound by the calendar year of 2023 with 1 each month as a trackable goal.
Comments?
Well, it came up originally, right, that we're not sure that that's attainable as we haven't fully hardened the process. And as we're already into February and we have yet to approve a single property, we may miss
we
that
did,
goal
we did approve Ooh La La.
as a class 2, but we approved them as
That was,
to do.
that was just a review. That wasn't necessarily what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
Right.
that's just a
But
review.
if we, as a committee, know what all of the buildings we wish to put on are, and if we can kind of set them up to go, then I don't know why it's not attainable. This says we'll aim to do one a month. It doesn't say we can't do.
Right, it
two
doesn't mean we
or
can do
three.
2 or 3, right?
Originally, there was a thought of bundling them.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that you understand when we talk about the SMART goal, the goal itself, which is the Historic Preservation Commission is to recommend 8 properties to the Board of Supervisors Class 2 historic resources, right? That's your goal. You've kind of broken down. I might tell you, if you're saying by the end of the year, add by the end of the year to that, and that makes it a SMART goal by itself. In other words, it's measurable, it's achievable, as far as you're concerned, or attainable. The key is, you have your goals within that to achieve that goal of 1 a month, but I don't know that you need to, I don't think you have to break the goal down that specific, in my point. The question that I would ask you as a commission, is I get this piece of it, and I know that's your focus for this year, and that's a goal. I view that as a goal for the commission, right? The other part of that that I would hope that we're focusing on as we're trying to add these properties is looking for opportunities from the state or the federal government for potential grants that would assist folks in, because part of that is that whole idea too, that if somebody comes in and says, I need to tear this building down because of X, your part of your goal, as I see it, or part of your responsibility as I see it, is that you want to give alternatives for them to do that, right? I mean, if it's a class 2, one of the things that it talks about is that you as a commission would give alternatives or suggestions of ways to do that. And one of those might be, yes, we understand that usually it's cost prohibitive, but there's potentially a grant from the Historic Commission from the state level. I mean, that's what we did with the historic for the bridge. We went out and we've gotten we got a grant for that. We've applied for a grant for the paper mill house. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be a government entity that's applying, individuals can apply as well for those to maintain their historic resources. So my comment to you would be, consider adding something like that as a goal for 2022 or 2023. Sorry, I'm still doing audit stuff for 2022. But something like that is a potential and another goal that you would have. Because I think your first one, if you just added by the end of the year, I think you've made it specific, and I think you've shown that it's attainable and relevant. The question would be, as you look at the whole purpose of what the commission is, if somebody comes in, let's say one of these 8 properties turns around and comes in and says, I need to go ahead and demolish. Do we have an alternative set to help them? You have a very limited time to respond. The board has a very limited time to respond. Do we have some resources that we found that are ready to help people to keep from doing that? And that's just a suggestion.
I think that's the best part about the commission is coming up with resources for people as an alternative to the destruction of any of these properties. I didn't add it to the goals because I kind of felt it was putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, as we don't have any designated properties as of yet. And
It's
one thought would be that if they had just gotten that classification, why are they then coming in and saying we want to potential? But I dismiss that as a potential goal for that reason, because we don't have any properties yet.
But I would argue if you could tell a property owner, we're suggesting that your house be a class 2 or a class 1. And here are the resources that we're going to be able to try to help you with as you move forward. That may be encouragement for somebody to say, for a property owner to say, instead of fighting you through the process, wanting to work with you through the process. It's just a thought process.
I think this would be a very good thing to put in our goals and objectives for next year. But I think, I agree with, Tiffany that it would be a little bit premature to do it this year. It requires a fairly substantial knowledge base of what's out there in terms of grants. We don't have that right now. Even I don't have that. And I worked for the state for 5 years and I sat on some of these grant review committees. And, you know, I don't think that as a group, we're necessarily prepared to do that homework right now. But I think that we need to get our procedures in line.
I would concede that if we made a goal of by the end of the year, have a commission established to begin that task for the following year, then at least we're planning, it's at least in our sights that this is
Yeah,
something
we
that we
could do
do
that.
need to do.
By the end of the year, have a subcommittee put together that was going to research resources.
Certified local government program isn't a real difficult one to apply for. That's
Right.
one I think that we could do.
Yes, and I had mentioned that to you, Steve,
Yep.
quite some time ago.
And, yeah, that definitely is doable.
I mean, it's my
We meet most of it.
understanding, looking at these things as a owner of one of these historic structures, that as a, if the house is used as a private dwelling, there is no help of any kind of any sort. It's only when an historic structure is readapted or used for public use or something that the state can release funds. But if you apply as the property owner for your own residence, was my understanding until few, there was nothing to apply to. There was no help of any kind of any sort. So this might be the case to be aware of when somebody wants to develop an historic property for public use because they want to expand, they want to do something, like a store, then they will be able, apartment buildings where they rent, then it's possible to have those type of funds.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and there are a lot of rules around these things. I mean, they're usually matching requirements and all kinds of other stuff. So we want to change the wording to be class 1, class 2,
Mhm,
and add on to it by the end of the year.
mhm.
Stephen, as I remember, one reason going back a couple of meetings that this number was chosen was because of the ability of the supervisors to handle large numbers of these things. So the number was kept down
And
for that
also
reason,
Budgeting.
and budgeting, yes. Because of the fact that there's a cost involved in each one. That's right, it was,
It was largely due to budgeting and
Yeah.
also the supervisors, but
right. So that's where the number 8 came from. I don't know, do we need to vote on this or can we just?
Well, if, I want to make sure you're comfortable with it and then, because I'll be sharing it with the board. I
I'm
shared
gonna add the,
Shade Tree Commission's goals. They had 3 or 4 goals that they wanted to do, and I shared that with the board last night. As commissions get done or boards get done, I'm sharing them.
So what are you going to add? What are you going to add, Tiffany?
I'm going to add the goal to have a subcommittee created to begin identifying a process of
Begin identifying possible
Right.
grant funding sources.
establish a process of identifying these different types of aids available potentially, because I mean, you have to say potentially because we're not really sure what.
Okay, can you give us some specific language?
Ready?
No.
Yes,
I need to
ma'am.
Work on
need to
it.
tweak it. Create subcommittee to start process of identifying grants, funds, aids for historic property owners by the end of the year.
That's fine.
Okay.
I think you can keep it that broad, you know, and you might wordsmith it a little bit more as you're doing that, but I think that you have the general, if the committee generally agrees to that, I think you're fine.
Somebody want to move to accept these?
I'll make a motion that we accept these goals for 2023.
Okay, and Rosario was second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Mhm.
Now items for the next agenda. We'll have no public comment. Items for the next agenda. There will be the Horace Lewis House. Hearing. And the Liseter Farmhouse will come to us next time.
Tell you, I really thought that we were gonna have an application by this point, and we don't. It may not, the application may not be in by that point, and so it may not come to you, but it's a
So
potential.
maybe Liseter House.
Yeah.
Now, what else are we gonna need to do? I mean, obviously, other things may come up for the agenda between now and then. This is,
Are we working on any other class 2 proposals?
I have them, but they're really hoping on the end to be class 1. I don't know about going through this process twice. If this amendment passes, because the property that I have are class 1.
I don't think we'll be able to submit class 1 next time. I don't think we, the.
No, but I'm saying-
You're saying you want to hold off until we can.
I mean, I don't see why going through.
I was simply saying, do we have any that we want to discuss? The possibility of pushing forward, not necessarily actually getting to a review.
I have quite a few. Yes, we could discuss several properties for next.
Okay,
Why don't we do that? I'll bring
Because my understanding is we need to propose it
yours.
ahead. And we do have goals
It
now.
only takes me a couple hours to look at the house to write the paper for me.
You've been in his.
Yeah.
So you could do this.
I already did it.
Yeah, okay.
okay, and if anything else comes up in the meantime, between now and next time, it can certainly go on the agenda. Let Steve Bradley know, but please also let me know. And with that, unless anybody has anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second that.